They tripled our type of earnout magnification just in a very quick time because they understood every industry has its quirks, its nuances, and things like that. HR tech is obviously no different, but the way they were able to come in and go, no, like this has value and this is how we can substantiate that. And this is what this dollar really means to you as a public company once they are at the door.
Welcome to the Exited Founder Podcast. Today, my guest is Sean McKenna. Sean founded Data Fusion HCM, a human capital management software and integration company. Within 9 months of launch, Sean received an offer to buy his company from Ceridian, now Dayforce, which Sean ultimately accepted, creating multi-generational wealth. Because of Sean's industry expertise, operational chops, and understanding of how to optimize an earnout in an M&A transaction, specifically within payroll software and HR tech industry, Sean decided to join us at Exitwise as an exited founder to help his fellow business owners prepare their companies for sale and help them maximize the sale of each business. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Sean McKenna.
Sean, thank you so much for being here. I'm really fired up that you're giving us this time. For everyone listening, Sean has just joined us as an exited founder, which means he's going to carve out some time to help our fellow founders who are going to go through M&A and join their M&A teams, particularly the ones in the HR tech space and maybe even more specifically in payroll. So thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. Happy to be here. Super excited to see how I can help. So I think for everybody, we'll start at the beginning. What made you decide to start this company?
Well, after a long career of sales and then really getting into software integration and HR tech sales, I saw that there was a niche and I saw that there was an opportunity to really grow a part of this market that I think was largely overlooked, possibly because of how complex and difficult it really was to tackle. But, complex puzzles have always been something intriguing to me. So when I looked at my former company and what they were doing, I really saw an opportunity to grow in this area, and I thought it was a great growth opportunity. So I actually tried to purchase my former company, obviously with you at Exitwise, and unfortunately we came up empty-handed. That didn't work out, but we learned a ton along the way, and I was able to start Data Fusion in June of 2020. And what we brought to the market through innovation and just understanding what was needed there was just something that I couldn't put aside. I had to do. It was very risky. It was very challenging, scary, but that's where I went with it.
I think when you say scary and challenging, when I think of you as an entrepreneur, having known you over many years now, and essentially 2 M&A transactions, your level of risk taking, your comfort with that. You are a very brave entrepreneur with the moves that you make. So I don't want to gloss over. You tried to buy a company where you were working because you had all these conversations with enormous customers, right? From a sales perspective, you saw something was missing. You saw an opportunity and you said it would be better to fix this opportunity with the existing company. They weren't willing to move in the direction you want to move. Buy them, fix that problem, and build something special. Tell me more about that. Like, what brought you to that conclusion, and then why didn't it work?
So that's a great question, because as I was really trying to push kind of the ceiling of that organization, we were really a very talented organization. There was immense talent throughout. In fact, my sales team was outperforming, the rest of the organization in so many ways that we almost got a little over our skis, if you will, as an organization because of how well we were doing in the market. And so we started to feel that squeeze. We started to feel kind of that crunch, our salespeople, as well as our operations and our development side. And to be honest, one of my top salespeople were looking at leaving because they just didn't see that the growth was really going to come to fruition. And I kind of tongue in cheek said, hey, if you can find me several $1 million, I'll buy the company and I'll fix it. And he actually introduced me to you several months later and said, hey, there's actually a way to do this. And he opened my eyes to what being a fundless sponsor was, or you helped in that capacity. So then I just seized that opportunity. I really went with it as a chance to be an entrepreneur and create, a growing software company.
Yeah, I think you learned a ton even though we didn't end up buying that company, and I think you can point a lot of reasons, like the value that they kept changing over and over was very frustrating. And then how are you going to finance this deal? You really had to have a valuation grounded in some real metrics. But in the end, you don't buy it. But I remember you talking about how much you learned from that process that you took into, well, actually, I don't want to spoil it. The day they said, I'm sorry, we're not selling you this company. Tell me what happens.
Well, first off, I believe you might have said, I'm not sure if you want to be an entrepreneur, Sean. That's a hard road to walk.
Yep.
But let me see if I can find you some CEO positions at some other companies. And I couldn't let go of what we were doing and what I really felt at that time. I was the best in the world at what we were doing.
Yep.
And so I just said, you know what, Todd, I think I have to sit and I have to pursue this in a different manner. Took some months to myself, my family really figured it out and said, hey, this is my chance to really go out there and do it the way that I see it and the way that I think would be most beneficial to the market and really, build a valuable organization. And I knew I had a lot of great people in my back pocket that could help me on that journey and might really be very inspirational, but also very powerful in how we move forward and push the market. And so, in the middle of the pandemic, after taking out a sizable loan to buy this organization, coming up empty-handed, and I'll throw out there that I had my fourth kid right at the end of 2019 before the pandemic, I decided, what the heck, let's do this and let's pursue this. I just had this confidence in what we were doing and what the market needed and who I thought really could help contribute to that journey.
From your position at this old company, you developed amazing sales relationships from a sales perspective with some of the biggest companies that would become your customer, right? So you're not starting from scratch. You have a ton of industry knowledge. You see the opening. You've got customers on the horizon. And I think the other really important point that I want people to understand is that you had built so much allegiance within your company, the best possible people would follow you, right? So you quit when you can't buy this company and you're taking enormous risk and you're taking some people along with you. So it's not like it's a long journey because after 9 months, somebody knocks on the door, not a public company, and says, we want to buy you. Take me through that.
Yeah, so we really spent the first 6 months working on our MVP for our software application and really trying to get, the ball rolling. I mean, the pandemic was actually a great kind of spell for us to be able to focus on that and not pursue as much, sales in that vein. But what we did was we put together a product that really changed the course of that particular area of HR tech. And then, very quickly, right out of the gates, once we had an MVP, we started selling really fast. But we only had 7 clients when we got our first offer. Yep. In fact, I actually laughed at the CEO when he made the offer. I didn't think he was serious. I said, we don't have any revenue. We only have 7 clients right now. And he says, I don't want your revenue or your clients. I want your software and I want your people with their experience. And that really flipped something where we realized that, we had some tremendous value and we had to start looking at it through a different lens. We had to quantify it differently. Then we were able to really, partner with this organization, bring a solution to fruition very quickly. And that was kind of the action that needed to be taken to really cement this offer and take it into the next phase of the process.
All right. So what's interesting here, right, is you get an inbound offer. It's a number that you're going to pass on, right? But this is a public company and a CEO of a public company calls you. So it's important, right? A lot of people get calls like, oh, we want to buy your company. And it's some analyst at some PE firm. And it is a total waste of time. You know that this is real. You say no. He doubles the offer on the spot, right? And I think what you just said is critically important to the strategy of creating a great M&A experience, is that the next thing you did was a strategic relationship with them, showing them what you could deliver faster and better than anyone. I mean, way faster, right? The other people that they'd gone to had already failed.
Yes.
So now you've got this proof point, and it has just risen the stakes for them that we have to have this come in, right? What happens next?
Yeah. So as we go, so I immediately reach out to you once the offer was tempting, right? And we waffled a little bit. We talked to our investors. We had some friends and family. We're bootstrapped with some small friends and family investors. That's it. We really were so taken aback by how quickly this happened and where we were at. I mean, we were in rocket ship mode. Like, we're just trying to take off. We're really ironing a lot of things out. I think at the time I was still shopping for a CRM. Like, that's where we were in the phase of our organization. When we came to you at Exitwise and said, hey, this is a real opportunity. We really need to look at this. We decided to say no at first because we just told them we weren't ready. But thereafter, it created a lot of intrigue as to why would they turn this down so quickly. And honestly, I made a kind of a tongue-in-cheek comment about, if it was 3 times that, I couldn't have said no. And then, a week and a half later, the CEO and the M&A team are back with us going, why? Why do you think like you're worth this much? Where's your TAM? And, really tell us about the revenue model. And once we explained that revenue model, they realized the upside. They realized how much they could capture in this market. And we went forward with that.
So I think some of the lessons, right, that you would bring into someone else's M&A transaction is that decision of like, is the offer right?
Right.
And when you go into an M&A transaction, like, you're thinking about, I'm going to market this business. You want to achieve certain goals, financial goals, professional, personal goals. When an inbound offer is dropped on your lap, you really haven't thought about that. Right. But because you tried to buy a company, your business was set up in a very transferable way, right? You learned that.
Yes.
So now an offer comes in, makes you think about what that offer is. I remember when you asked me, it's like, hey, you already doubled it. Change your life right now. Let's take this offer. Okay. And you're like, no, I think, and after conferring with your people, I think we have so much more juice in the tank. And so the line we gave them, right, was, I'm sorry, we're building a rocket ship. We love having you as a partner.
Yeah.
Why don't we revisit this conversation in a couple of years when we go from 7 to 1,000 customers? And you are basically shooting a shot over the bow, right? Saying like, we're coming for it.
Yeah.
And that was received really, really well.
Yes, it was.
Talk to me about how we basically, at that point, we banker up, and how your role of that initial negotiation, getting it that far, is then handed off to kind of separate you as the absolute talent in the team, really in the world, that they need.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think this has always been one of the best traits with Exitwise. I mean, you said you're a generalist, right? Like you can look at anything, but you really were like, I want to bring in a specialist that understands what you do, how it needs to be done, and has waded in these waters before, right?
And transacted with,
right. And then to boot, they have, the experience in already working with this public company, with this organization. So there's a track record there, there's familiarity, and all it did was really just, created a lot of legitimacy to the process, and they understood what we did exceptionally well, and was able as a banker to step right in and go, in some case, I mean, I think we were looking at an earnings, of like a 2x earnout, and they're like, 6x should be where you're at, right? And they negotiated that very quickly for us. So they tripled our type of earnout, magnification just in a very quick time, because they understood. I think that's the big thing is, every industry has its quirks, its nuances and things like that. HR tech is obviously no different, but the way they were able to come in and go, no, like, this has value and this is how we can substantiate that. And this is what this dollar really means to you as a public company once they are at the door.
Yeah, I think when you bring in an industry expert on your team, first of all, I didn't know what PEPM was, right? And they walk in, they know every metric.
Yeah.
And they sold a company to your public company. It was like 30 days before.
Yeah.
So they've already been through it. So when you say, we'll give you 2 times every dollar of revenue, and your banker now says, no, it's 6. That's what we negotiated last time, right? It's so much power in your hands. So anyway, the experts can do their side and they can go to war, right? We brought the tank to the battle, but then you as the founder get really elevated. You get to start thinking very collaboratively with this team. And I think that's a really important point that business owners are thinking about selling their business need to know there has to, once you get that team in place, we separate you, right? And now we are thinking about elevating you within that organization, not just what your employment agreement is going to look like, but how are you truly going to function and be successful on the other side of the transaction. You talk a little bit about, if founders are going to go through that, how you would coach them.
Yeah. So, I mean, number one is know your stuff, right? Like, I mean, I think that's one thing that I could take away from my experience and what really led to my confidence in the negotiations and the discussions was that I knew the business. So I could look at them and go, listen, the way you've been attacking this business as a public organization, you could tilt this way, right? And look at the opportunity, right? Look at our experience in this market and see how, the name and the technology you have, how it can be 1 + 1 = 3.
Yep.
Like that was the major thing that I, could be as a storyteller and an educator to this organization because nobody knew this industry as well as I did. So I could help them understand the industry better and see how much they could capitalize on it. And that was something that, our banker kept going is like, this is a 1 + 1 = 3 scenario. Like this is how we're going to really show tremendous value in this acquisition. Here's the, really the opportunity for value.
Yep.
And then here's how the realization of that value really.
So it's not to take anything away from the banker. We brought the right people to the table. They crushed it. But your ability to understand operational, how the business will add value. How does it integrate? How do you execute with the people that you have? Bankers cannot do that. They don't do that. They don't see that side of it. And so when we add somebody like you to an M&A team, specifically in HR tech, and you can have that conversation, all of a sudden a tremendous amount of value gets applied to the team, to the founder themselves. And you certainly were elevated through that organization to the point when you left, the C-suite's asking to give you a consulting agreement to help them still, right? So yes, knowing your stuff, really important. But I think it takes somebody like you, an exited founder, to help really let the other side understand where all the value in this business is outside of the numbers.
Yes.
What surprised you most about the M&A transaction?
There's a couple things. One was the amount of work it takes, right? I mean, running the rocket ship startup software company is, that's a marathon in itself, but to pretty much add a whole nother role on top of it, that's one thing. But I'd say kind of the emotional journey, the ebbs and flows was something that, was pretty surprising to me is, elements of defensiveness that come out like when you're negotiating for your baby, right? The educational component or the frustrations, like, why do they not see this, right? Like, how can we provide a better understanding of how these things work? And then even into the post-exit, kind of the coming back down from, what is kind of the hand-to-hand combat of negotiations where it seems very adversarial in certain points. Then to turn around and go, okay, we got through it. We got to the finish line. You're exhausted, but then all of a sudden you're lifted back up, like, because there's this warmth that comes after these acquisitions. It's like, hey, this company, even though they were trying to pay as little as possible for your company, they're super excited that they bought something that they really wanted, right? Like, I mean, it's like buying a new car. The process is terrible when you're in there at the deal sheet and you're working through all the things and no, I don't want the warranty. But when you drive off the lot, right? Like, it's the new car smell, you feel good, you got your baby, you got what you wanted. And that's how they were. So they were very warm and inviting. So it's that ebb and flow of the emotional journeys that
you're running two businesses, right? You got to run your business and sell it. So that's double the work. The emotional journey, I thought you handled that incredibly well. And coaching founders through that is not an easy task. When do you really need to focus? When can you let others do their job? When do you let key people into the process that are on your side? When do you keep it kind of at bay? Like, you're obviously highly qualified for that. I think the other piece that really struck me is your ability to help construct the earnout. So largely you get a big chunk of money and you basically have to say, when you get an earnout, like, that is what I'm going to live with. If I don't see another dollar, I have to be happy. But in this particular case, you were able to help construct an earnout that showed the other side how they are going to win and win big. right? And then, from a legal perspective, we kept a lot of levers in your hands.
Yeah.
And you knew this can't be a 2-year, this can't be a 3-year earnout. We got to extend this out because they have to implement everything that we are able to sell.
Right.
And that takes time. We need to build a window for them and let them be successful. And I got to tell you, like, everybody says earnouts, they're terrible. You can't count on them. But your ability to understand what the other side is going to do with these assets or why they're going to do it, I think you can be incredibly helpful developing earnouts that created multi-generational wealth for you, right? So I don't know if you have anything more to say about that, but to me, it was one of the really, really impressive moments. Can you talk about post-transaction, right? You're all excited, right? Your employees are excited. You made sure all of your employees were excited. Maybe talk a little bit about that, because I think as founders, we think, I'm selling my business. What's in it for me?
Yeah. So something we did, which I'm very proud of, is that we gave everybody in our organization equity. So everybody who was hired that was brought on before our acquisition all had meaningful equity in the company. And that was something that was important to me because as I understood how the earnout was going to work, it was going to be based on how productive we were, how much we could sell, how much revenue we could drive, but also how much would be implemented and would be successful. And there's also a sense of pride of just, wanting to continue to do good work, right? So that all aligned in the earnout. And what that allowed us to do was it allowed everybody in our organization to actually have a meaningful outcome, something that they could be proud of. And then through the earnout, it was the carrot, right? It was something that allowed everybody to really strive to do their best work, to innovate, to work through what is going to be a very painful and difficult integration process into a new organization, but also understand our fundamental values, continue to embody those from a day-to-day, place. And then, what that led to was, 5 people became millionaires on our team, and every single person on our team had well over a 6-figure take home from that. And so we really were able to all rise and do it together. Yeah. And again, the way we structured our earnout, I understood that those could be levers that would really help maximize that. So, not only was it, how can this be, the best, outcome for Data Fusion? How can this be a great outcome for Dayforce? But also, how can these people continue to be incentivized and really help drive this earnout to a very successful outcome?
Yeah, it is remarkable. That is not something your banker, your M&A attorney, or your tax accountant can help orchestrate, right? So having somebody like you on a team to be able to see, there's a transaction happening, but now there's life after that has to be incentivized and has to be enjoyable, right? And goals that are really achievable. It's just one of those things. If you don't have the operational experience, you cannot add value. It's one of the reasons I am really excited to have you helping our fellow founders in M&A transactions. It's certainly a new way to do it. But, I've done it 10 times now, and I know the value that we bring to these transactions. Anything else that you would want to talk about, like how you add value, how you could add value to someone else's transaction?
Yeah, I think the way that I can add the most value as an exited founder is really to be able to drive my experience of trying to buy an organization as well as trying to sell it, right? Is really looking at it through that lens and understanding how to really pull and push on the different value levers that are really going to help you exit as efficiently and seamlessly as possible, but also as lucratively as possible.
Yeah, that's no joke. You built a company and had an offer in 9 months and sold it in 16, right? There was a gap between first offer to like the legitimate offer, the one you were willing to take. So getting something done really efficiently, I think is really important, right? It keeps costs down and time kills deals. And man, did you run through this really, really quickly. I think it speaks to why the outcome was so successful. Anything else, any other advice that you would give to our fellow founders who are thinking about selling?
Yeah, I mean, as far as advice goes, I think as a previous exited founder, really where I see it is trying to keep a level head, understanding the emotional ebbs and flows that are really going to come from this type of an experience, and then just really making sure that you don't lose your passion for your business. You never undermine that. Don't let up on those components, right? And really continue to really bring a team along with you that's really going to help not only continue to build the business during the exit process, because that can't be alleviated, right? But continue to, drive forward for your team. And, there's a lot of people that you can impact in that process. And I think it's something for me that was the most fruitful and best thing that I've ever done is being able to change the lives of the people that were part of this, that really it was built on their back.
They helped you get there. Yeah, for sure. What is you think surprised you most about the whole M&A process?
The biggest surprise, I would say, going back, it's the emotional journey, it's the ups and the downs, it's the hard work. But, I think it's what happens afterwards. It's when you're working within the earnout and, the different obstacles that are just going to inherently be in place by, folks within another organization that have different goals and there's bureaucracy and there's political components.
And all yelling's about you and how much money you just made.
Right. Yeah. So there's a lot of different dynamics that happen during that. And I think that's obviously part of the negotiation process is putting yourself in a position to be able to, obviously you're not going to be the titan of everything and be able to make all the calls, but really have the span of control that's necessary to keep the mission and the earnout alive. And the earnout's obviously always going to be there to be the backstop to say, hey, no, we have to do this because this will negatively impact our earnout if we go your way. But really kind of understanding those dynamics was, kind of more of the biggest surprise, but it's a great learning experience. It's something I think I can really add value to future, exited founder.
For sure. Your employment agreements and the way it was structured, you really were able to wall your organization off in order to perform without a whole lot of there was certainly oversight, right? But nobody can come over and kick over the can and tell you to do it differently. And if it weren't for that, the earnout would not be achieved. And I know there were some people over there that were not necessarily rooting for you. And the fact that you could identify that really helped construct the right deal. I think for another founder, you're going to see, I like to say that exit founders see around corners. That was definitely one where you saw around the corner and made sure that wasn't going to be a problem. Yeah. Look, this is awesome. I am so excited to have you as an exited founder on Exitwise. I'm excited for the next person that gets to have you on their team. Because the bankers, we know we bring the best. We know we're going to get you the attorneys, the tax accounting, but an exited founder is really icing on the cake. So I really appreciate you giving us the time.
Absolutely. I am happy to be here and I'd love to help where I can.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of the Exited Founder Podcast. For business owners who are looking to sell or want to ensure they're exit ready, our team is here to help you maximize your outcome. So connect with us at exitwise.com today.